And then from there, I was like, okay, let me hop on social media and start a page. I didn't promote it. I didn't even connect my personal page with it. It was very separate. It was like, I just need a space that's my own little bubble that I can go to and connect with people and see what's going on, and join some groups and follow some things and just kind of have my own solace. And then I was like, well, you know what? I want to do a podcast. I'm a radio girl anyway. I'm in media. I love, so it made sense. And I was like, I had been wrestling with God about really being transparent, because no one outside of like count less than one hand knew I even had this brand and this page. And so when I decided to do the podcast, I was like, you know what, now is the time to connect everything. And so I said, hey, my first post kind of coming out the gate was like, I have a new podcast, but also here's my brand, here's my page. And my girlfriends were like, how the hell do we not know you had this going on? Not the journey per se, but how do we not know that you had all this content and that you had started a brand and that, you had bought some merchandise? Like, what the hell? And I was like, I wasn't ready. Sorry, sure. Not sorry. I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to be that vulnerable, because I knew at drop of a dime, I could just be like breaking down. And so I had to get to the place where, that'll still happen sometimes, but I had to get to the place where I was able to at least talk about my journey, and then find others who were, in the same community of space. And definitely more women of color that were in the same space. And so it has been nothing short of a blessing, meeting women like yourself and so many others who I can now reach back out to, not just for content, but for my own journey, like advice. And it has, when I tell you I had more girlfriends or girls I went to college with, or like in different circles, that reached out to me after that initial post, it was like, hey girl, me too, I see you. I said, really? Really? Had no, it just happened literally last night. Someone reached out to me from a social org that we're in, an all women's organization, and said, hey, I had no idea you were struggling with infertility. We did it for 4 years. We ended up having IVF to get our daughter. Did you know that? No, had no idea. I've seen you for the last 5 years of my life in different settings and doing volunteer work. Had no idea. And so I've had more of those happen over the last, almost a year. Podcast started last June. So, over the last half a year than I ever could have imagined. And so I look back and just kind of laugh at wrestling with being open and transparent. But it has been just amazing. Yeah, and it's just so much more common than you ever think. And my first whole season of the podcast were people mostly that I knew through either myself or a friend of a friend or couples that we knew. And we had no idea.
Right.
So it's been amazing.
And that just goes to show we don't talk enough about these types of things.
That's it.
As girlfriends. As friends and as sisters, mothers, aunties, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I resonate a lot with that, especially in brown communities. I think a lot of it comes from the fact that our voices are shunned for most of our lives. Like, girl, you can't say that. Or girl, you can't do that. They're going to think
that's private. That's
such and such and such and such and such. And a lot of black families have that saying, and a lot of people of color in general that I know, they all have the same saying in a different way, in a different language. Like, what happens in the house stays in the goddamn house. Okay. Right. And I think that we do ourselves a disservice because it becomes mental conditioning, and then we don't. Until somebody comes out like you or I, we're like, hey, I got this thing called infertility. We're here. Then all of a sudden, everybody just comes out of the woodworks. Like, girl, I did this, and auntie such and, what you mean, auntie such and such and such? What? Why nobody didn't tell me? Out here thinking I'm alone.
Yeah.
This is crazy, And then you have people that are veterans in the space, like your Broken Brown Egg, your Fertility for Color Girls, and who else? Sisters in Laws with Erica McAfee.
Hannah's Daughters of Hannah.
Hannah's Daughters in Atlanta that do the group meetups, when before COVID and stuff.
Yeah.
And a couple of other organizations that have been around more than 3 years, because I've only been around for 2. So, there's a couple more, but not 10 yet, I don't think. I don't think we've reached 10. And then we have Calais Stewart, who's a public figure who's now speaking a lot about it, and Eggs Over Easy. Yeah, like when I found out about Eggs Over Easy, I was like, shut up. When is it dropping? Right. I've been watching her for 2 years, and it took her 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
She was in those trenches.
She was.
Really hard. Really hard.
And I can only imagine what she had to do and we spoke actually on my podcast, but
yeah, I heard the episode that you did with her. Yeah.
What she had to do to get to the point of convincing a network, you know what I mean? And thank God for OWN, to accept that. I would love to know how many networks turned it down.
All of them. Clearly, all of them did.
Yeah.
Because OWN was the one who featured it and premiered it. Now everybody going to try to pick up the pieces, but OWN was the one who premiered it. And then, you had her on the podcast and stuff, which was fantastic. I was glad somebody was able to do it and get in touch with Creaty's getting so much exposure now, which is amazing. And so it's like, I feel like now, because she did that and Calais was a part of it, and Keisha Napoleon and some other great media people like yourself, and Coach Jesse and all that. And so all this exposure for organizations like the Nina Q. Cade Foundation, and was on the documentary too. And then the young couple who was still in the thick, I can't remember her name, but they're public figures too. And just getting all that exposure. So it's like, oh my gosh, this is phenomenal. I couldn't imagine